Hi, my name is Fiona Goss. I am a painter. I study the 5 years Masters of Fine Art, which is half history of art and half studio practice, and my specialty is painting. I love working within the subject matter of my lived experiences. So often that takes the form of Kenya, or equally kind of like existing between multiple cultures. So I'll use imagery from Kenya, Uganda, Denmark and Scotland and kind of mix them all together to create this quite like lucid, dreamlike imagery. And then on the other side, I absolutely love just doing like raw African contemporary art, and will paint scenes of Uganda or Kenya or different kind of like folklore and political turmoil at the moment, like Uganda with the election that just happened yesterday. Crazy stuff coming out of there.
Crazy.
So yeah, and like that kind of colours also. The light reacts here, I find insane. Like just like here when I'm sitting and looking out onto the grass, like it's not just green, it's literally like luminescent with like yellow tones, and like constantly trying to like really hit that like very vivid colour that is everywhere here.
Yeah. Anyways, so why did you decide to study in Edinburgh?
Okay, so I really followed this course. The fact that I can do both history of art and learn like an entire degree of history of art, and then also have the studio practice there.
Yeah.
I also am Scottish, so I wanted to study in Scotland. Free education. We love it.
Yeah. And describe your recent projects to me, inside or out of uni.
So, I've had lots of exciting projects. So last semester, I was looking at sexuality and femininity associated with like my kind of like coming to womanhood. And I think like these questions are ones that like we don't really ask ourselves as we grow up, and we don't really talk about. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna like dive into it with my art. And initially I thought it was like this really broad exploration into like general femininity, and then like the more I got into it, I was like, no, this is like me understanding myself, and like why I have certain like affiliations with sex, or why I crave like certain male attention. And like all of these like very intense emotions actually that I was like kind of deconstructing through my practice. And it was so intense that it got to the point where like I'd be in studio until like 9 o'clock at night, and I'd walk out and I would just like cry because it was just like the emotions were like so at the surface. And then I would go and I speak to my tutor and I'd be like, yeah, like it's really like hitting me quite hard and I don't know what to do about it. And she was like, just didn't offer me any help or like didn't offer me any guidance. So I think like this semester I'm kind of not gonna go down that alley because it is just quite intense, and maybe I'm not at the stage where I can like fully devote enough energy to it because I'm here, and in Kenya like I find it so hard to not look at Kenyan imagery.
You have to.
Yeah. And it just like it's all around you, it's all encompassing. So I'm looking at color and light. I'm wanting to paint more like just like in the wild, so en plein air, looking at impressionists and just like really being here and painting, and kind of like in building on my skills in terms of like color mixing, paint application, just like all of those sweet things.
So who is your inspiration?
Okay, so my big daddy inspiration will always be Michael Armitage. He is Kenyan, he went to Hillcrest, he is just like, to me, my favorite. And I'm actually trying really hard to meet him at the moment because my uncle knows him. So Michael Armitage, if you're watching, like hit me up.
Hit me up.
He is so good, like with his color, with his application, the way that he can like capture the emotion of people, but with like hardly any brush marks. And like through watching his interviews, he paints on this like Lubogo fibers. So, and I got Lubogo fibers.
Did you? There you
because
go.
I want to like, it's really interesting. It's actually made out of banana tree.
Oh my
so
god.
it's like really rough.
Whoa, that is rough. That's hefty.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try and paint on that because that's what he paints on.
What do you enjoy about the art industry, and what would you like to see change?
Okay, I love the sense of community, but that is also the thing that I think needs to change. The idea of like an art community is often very closed in and is unwilling to let in newer artists, to let in people that they don't think are established enough or as wealthy enough, or even in some senses won't let in like a mature student, or like, it's so interesting the dynamics that you find, because like as soon as you are like introduced or like your foot is in, everyone's like, welcome, like this is so exciting, we're doing all this stuff. But then to actually feel like you belong to that kind of a community is really difficult. And I genuinely think that a lot of art being sold by students or graduates at the moment is far too expensive, because it's kind of like, well, what are you paying for? Like, we don't have a name yet. But I think in reality, like, your work should be like your cost of materials and your time. Yeah. Because that's also the only way that you're going to get your name out there. I think I often end up underpricing myself, because I think, well, like, if I was buying this painting, how much would I want to spend on it? As someone who realistically doesn't have that much, like, extra income to spend on a luxury item, which painting is. Yeah. And so, like, through that, I like that people can be like, oh yeah, I can buy your painting. Instead of, like, buying a print from Anthropology or, like, IKEA. Yeah. Let me buy something from, like, an artist, like a student, and let me support them. I get so much in fine art, especially, this whole idea of like consumer art is like, no, like that's like sin to say that it's like consumer, which is crazy. Like, how are we going to make a living? So many of the things that like I do as well, Mum's like, well, I wouldn't have that in my house. Yeah. Like, that's not very nice. Like, that's quite intense to look at. And you're like, well, yeah, like there's a message behind it. And at the same time, like, I can do like pretty landscapes to put in a house. But that's sin. Like, that's a big no-no in terms of art school. How to make money as an artist, like 101. Should be a course. Should be Everybody would take it. Everybody would take it.
If you had your own exhibition, what would you exhibit and why?
I really, really want to do a pop-up exhibition in the Meadows. And I want to create, essentially, like, a half of a white cube. So have, like, a floor and 2 walls. So it's like an open space, so that instead of like you going to the art is brought to you. And I think this is such a big thing within the art world as well, because like to walk into a gallery is quite intimidating, right? And often like the gallery space is like exclusive, or you have to book, or like all of these things, or you have to look a certain way. And it means that so many of like the everyday people just aren't experiencing art. I was thinking about like, what if you brought that kind of like a white cube idea to like a street in like city centre in town in Nairobi. A gallery doesn't need to be a permanent space. It doesn't need to be a fixture. It doesn't need to be like somewhere that you go.
That's so true.
It can be anything. And I think like Art Crap, like the organisation in ECA, was doing exactly that this semester. It was doing pop-up exhibitions at like random places. Yeah. And it showed that like it doesn't need the whole like white walls and like perfect lighting.
Yeah. Have you ever exhibited your own work before?
I did a exhibition in Edinburgh in conjunction with Creative Colonies, which is in Stockbridge. Really, really cool opportunity actually, where you like open up your house and you have an exhibition and you can sell whatever. And what's great about it is it's like advertised for you, so you have like random people that like you would have never had the contacts for, just like kind of walking in. So that's the exposure. So yeah, I had a show, and I did landscapes and kind of like exhibited like past works that I had done from A-levels and smaller pieces. But I had just gone to Skye, the Isle of Skye. And it was incredible, and it rained and it snowed and it was sunny, literally there, and you're like so sketchbook and just like going for it. And I loved the colors and I loved like the atmosphere of it. Man, I was so exhausted by the end of it. Like when you put on something like that, you really are like putting yourself,
your whole soul,
everything. But I think what I did learn from my first exhibition is like I priced my things way too low.
What do you hope to do in the future? What are your career goals?
I think I'm going to stay in academia for a while. I think I want to do my master's in Copenhagen after my master's in Edinburgh. Then I'm really keen to do my PhD, which I will hopefully do in Cape Town at UCT, at Michaelis School of Art, which is where I would have gone if I hadn't gone to Edinburgh, and so to do it in contemporary African art. My art page is Fiona_Goss_art. Yeah, you can find me there. I'm also on the ECA Year 2 website. You can see my art there. And yeah.